Hi guys, I'm Ray and we are streaming blacksmithing. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Man, it has been quite a few days. This last weekend has been very, very eventful. Mostly because I spent all weekend working on shooting videos for YouTube in the upcoming weeks. I started shooting a video for the van. I continued shooting some of the stuff for the Ray's sign, part of the Ray's Smithy sign, and then I also did a little bit of shooting for our hammer, like our hammer project that we made here on stream. So those will be coming soon. This week's video, Wednesday's video, is going to be a review on the drill press that we used to drill the holes for this rivet in this set of tongs. So I'm honestly pretty darn tired, and we're gonna get through this, and then I will, I'll take a rest and I'll do some sleeping, and we'll get through this. But for the moment, I'm a little tired. Welcome in, Corwin. Hey. Like I said, I'm pretty tired, but we're gonna get through this and I'll be okay. How are you guys? I'm really excited to see you guys and share all of the new video ideas and concepts that I've gotten, that I spent this weekend doing. And yeah, we should have a decent amount of fun today. So today is going to be another relatively easy day. This is the piece of steel that we were left with on Friday, or after Friday's stream. And it's pretty darn flat, and we've got some relatively flat sides here, but it's really thick still. So my goal for today is to thin this out to about here. I want about a half, I want this about half the thickness it is right now. But I want to keep this thickness on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this width here and we're going to turn it into length. So we're going to grow this piece of stock this direction. It should, in theory, make it a lot easier to wrap around that handle. And I do want a nice thick heel on the back of this guy. So once I'm happy with the overall width of this guy, then we're going to start stretching out the faces of this axe. So we're going to do it in halves. So we're going to turn this half into kind of half of the width of the axe head, and this side to about half the width of the axe head. So the first thing we're going to do is toss this in the forge so it can get hot. And then got a few more things I can share. Darn it, it fell over. Of course it fell over. All right. Stick it in there just like so. Not too bad. New production at work. So plenty of hiccups in shipping. Ooh. Shipping hiccups are always a pain in the butt. And I can drop all my equipment. That's all right. One of the great things about being primarily a content creator, for YouTube and stuff, is I really don't have to deal with shipping a lot. I feel like the only time I've ever really had to deal with a lot of shipping was when I worked at the jewelry store, because I worked at a hub that would actually do repairs for about 20 different jewelry stores. And so they would ship all of the jewelry to our store, we'd fix it, and then we'd ship it out. So I did do a lot of shipping with labels and boxes and all that. However, you know, they had it down to a pretty good science. So I feel like I was pretty lucky for the most part. There were times where boxes would get lost, and that always sucked because thousands upon thousands of dollars of jewelry were in those boxes. So they didn't like it when they got lost. All right. So it looks like an ad, the first ad is starting up shortly. So yeah, we will kind of hang out while that happens and wait for people to start coming into the stream. Today I am still going to be doing a lot of like talking and answering questions. Once again, this is going to be a stream that is relatively straightforward as far as the metalworking portion of it. There's not going to be a lot of explanation needed. It's basically, I'm just going to run the metal through the press over and over again. So kind of on the boring side, but still interesting. It's always fun to see fire and glowing metal. So I am expecting to still have a fun day today here in the shop. But with that said, I am going to be relying on you guys to kind of help me out, coming up with topics and interacting so that we can turn something that's less interesting into a really fun and entertaining stream. Oh goodness. So we've got a couple more seconds left of this ad, and then I will do a little bit more housekeeping. I have a few other things that I really want to talk about and let you guys know. And then we, hopefully we'll get enough heat that we might be able to get started relatively soon. I did start the forge a little bit early, but I didn't put the steel in, so it's probably going to take a little bit of time for the steel to heat up. All right, it looks like the ad is done. So today's propane, or I guess this week's propane, does not actually have a sponsor. I am the sponsor of propane this week. If you would like to be the sponsor of propane for next week or any subsequent weeks, check out my KoFi, and I'm always looking for propane donors. So if you'd like to get your name on a propane tank, it's there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is this week we started working on the van. Welcome in, Yankee. Welcome in. So yeah, today I think it was Saturday, we started working on the van. So I did a quick little tour of the van before we did anything to it. And I kind of talked about our plans and our goals with that. And then we started putting the insulation in. So we are a little less than half done with that. We've got this lovely like peel and stick insulation. So it is sound dampening and insulating at the same time, and it's peel and stick. So it was really convenient putting it in. It was more like, you measure twice and cut once, and then, you peel it off, stick it on, and work on the next panel. So I am a little bit concerned that the heat, because it is super, super hot recently, that the heat will kind of melt the glue a little bit. So I'm hoping that it actually sticks onto the walls of the van. Fingers crossed and all that it sticks at least until we get some kind of panel wall, I guess, what am I trying to say? Wall covering. So originally we were looking at doing some foam walls, but we ended up buying a lot less than we thought we were getting. So I think we've only got enough to do the ceiling. So we've got to figure out what we want to do for the walls of the van. And that's going to be interesting. So I guess we still have about half of the insulation to put up before we really have to start worrying about it. So that's not too bad. I've got a little bit of time. So I'm really excited. It was really fun starting that video. And so I will be producing a full video on the process of converting the van. The first build, I guess, like version 1.0, I guess, it's going to be really kind of temporary, and everything's going to be able to be moved around, because I want to make sure that we don't put anything permanently in that van that we're going to regret later. So I just kind of want to take this first build and this first trip or two to kind of decide what we like, what we don't like, and modify from there. So hopefully version 2.0 will, start putting in a few more permanent fixtures in this van. So today, I'm not sure if I feel like we can officially start the axe project, but I mean, we are still in the middle of kind of processing the stock. But I'm not entirely sure if, I feel like I can really say we're starting the axe. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be doing very much recording yet, because I feel like really I want to start recording when we start actually shaping the axe. There's a lot of interesting things going on when I start shaping like the beard of the axe, and I want to put some decorations on the eye of the axe, or I guess the back end of it. But this first day, Monday stream, this first day, is going to be a little bit more on the thinning out process, thinning and lengthening our stock. So I guess we're kind of drawing things down a bit, maybe. I'm not entirely sure if that's, the right word for it, I guess. So, I have that we are, in the stream title that we're, working on, or we're working towards a folded axe. But like I said, I don't know that I really feel like we're, actually actively working on the axe just yet. How's our metal? Still pretty cold looking. I don't even have a glow on it. So I guess I have to come up with more topics to, fill time and space, I guess. So I've been, as I said earlier, I've been working on the hammerhead that we were working with, or that we made as our, not this last project, because the last project was these talks, but the project before, our last major project. I've kind of been trying to put a handle on it, and I don't actually have any good pieces or sources of hickory, so I ended up going over to one of the local farm supply stores, and I bought a replacement handle, and it said that it was for I guess it's an engineer's hammer or a blacksmith's hammer replacement, and so I bought it for I don't know, I think it was $7 or something, but it's a huge chunk of hickory, and it's all varnished and everything, and really what you're supposed to be able to do is just put the head in the handle and then just go. But I realized when I brought it home and into the shop, I compared it to the hammerhead and the little area that you're supposed to be able to put into the head. It was just too wide. So I spent a whole bunch of time sanding that down, and I'm still not entirely happy with it. So this is what I've got done so far. You can kind of see that it's not even all the way down in there. It's kind of stuck. So I don't know. I need to get it all the way down here so that it at least is touching this bottom, so I can so I can put the I guess the wedge in there. But I mean, seriously, this thing is so thick. I've spent so much time grinding it already, and it's still almost too thick to go through this hole. So I'm thinking that maybe in the future we make a bigger drift and like drift bigger holes. But yeah, we're learning a lot trying to handle this hammer. I mean, I feel like I could almost use it as is. Like, just hammer it, But it's only halfway through this eye. So I'm afraid that if I use it too much, that the hammer will just shoot right off. It does look like a hammer, though. Welcome in, Mahalo. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining the stream today. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I've been working on. The other thing I'm working on, like I said, is the raised part of the raised smithy sign. So I have a piece of mirrored sheet, and I'll show you the other piece. I cut it in half, and if I bring this over here, you can kind of see the half that I cut off. You can definitely see it's nice and shiny. It's mirrored and everything. It's really neat. I bought this for a different project, but I thought that it would work really, really well for the raised part, especially because we're going to put LEDs on here. So both sides are mirrored. This side is mirrored, but it's got like a plastic film over it. So I'm hoping that if I bend this guy, or I guess bend edges along this and kind of turn it into a box, I can affix the LEDs along the edges. And then when you turn them on, then the mirror polish will actually start reflecting those LEDs and create a larger amount of light. So that is the plan, but I'm kind of stuck because it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick sheet steel, and my bender is not designed for that thick of sheet steel. So I'm kind of trying to figure out if I am able to use it anyway, or if I'm gonna have to score the edges and bend them over the anvil. So that'll be sometime probably Thursday, and hopefully by Monday I'll have that sign hung up on the project wall. So you guys can look forward to that as well. Let's see. We're starting to get a little bit of heat on our piece of steel. I'm gonna see about flipping it over and then, hopefully we'll get a more even heat out of it. You can kind of see on that side that it's a little bit glowy, but it's definitely nowhere near as hot as we need it to be in order to actually work it. Gotta be a little bit on the careful side too, because I can only pick up that steel on the long side with these tongs, and then on the skinny side I have to use these guys. So I want to keep both sets of tongs relatively close at hand, so that I don't have to, fight with the heat, and I can make sure that everything is nice and ready to go. Oh, goodness gracious. So once I get this piece of steel a little bit thinner, we might actually be able to raise the bottom plate of the press upwards, and that'll make it a lot easier to use the press, because then we won't have to stop it while it's low. And that's always a pain in the butt, because if I don't remember to do it, then it retracts all the way up along the springs, and then it takes forever to get it to go back down again. So I'm pretty glad that, I should be able to raise the floor a little bit soon. Fuck, do it. Hey, Ray, those tongs on the anvil, are they the ones I made recently? These are the ones I made recently. They're kind of ugly because I have a tendency to, like, not pay that close of attention when I'm making tongs. But yeah, I just made these as the last project that we just finished up. They're a little bit wider than I probably want them to be, but they're designed so that I can hold larger bars of stock like so, you know, relatively securely. And that makes it a lot easier to work them. Now, ugly, beautiful, surely. Yes, I mean, you know, they're functional. As long as they function, I don't know that I mind that they're ugly. And they're not so ugly that I couldn't fix them and make them look prettier. Like, this side it's a little bit more rounded, where this side has a bit more of a point. I could, in fact, fix that so that they were more even. And then my other issue with them is that these two curves here are just as janky as that. I mean, I could make this a much smoother transition on this end. This one's a pretty smooth transition. I was pretty happy with that side. The last critique I have on these guys is if you look straight down them like so, I hope that was whatever vehicle was, there was some kind of air that, anyway, so they kind of curve this way, and it would be nice if they were like straight up and down. So not anything that I can't fix, just something that I didn't have time to fix this weekend. So they function. They're not the prettiest thing I've ever made yet, but they could get there. And like I said, I probably will make them a little bit prettier. That way they play a little bit better as a YouTube cover photo, right? All right. Let me check the shop real fast because I did hear like some weird pressurized air. Like I said, I think it was like a air brakes of a vehicle outside on the busy street out there, but I just want to make sure. I mean, yeah, everything seems all right in here. I'm going to chalk it up to there was a big dump truck that passed on along the road over there. But it's that whole never leave something alone that concerns you in a shop, because it could become from like a small problem that you can just deal with real easy to something a lot bigger, like smelling, burning. If it's not the right type of burning, always check that out, make sure that you're not setting your shop on fire or other things that you don't want on fire. All right. So we're starting to get some glowing metal. It's not quite as bright as I want it to be. So I think for Wednesday stream, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the forge and have the piece of stock already in the forge. That way I've got a decent amount of heat already built up before I start the stream, so I don't have to, yammer on for longer than I need to. See, I enjoy talking to you guys and stuff, but, we do kind of also come here for the blacksmithing, so I want to make sure that we get to the blacksmithing at a reasonable, in a reasonable amount of time. Let's see, what else is going on? Man, I've gone through most of my stuff, like my housekeeping kind of stuff. I told you all about the 3 videos that I was working on this weekend, and, what we're going to be doing today. told you about sponsoring propane. What else? I don't know. So how was you guys' weekend? I told you about my weekend, and I think, Corwin told us a little bit about what was going on for their weekend. But what about you guys? Did you guys have a good weekend? It is super hot today. It's like in the 90s. It was in the 90s all weekend, and so I did my best to stay pretty cool. I spent a lot of time out here, but in the evenings, I pretty much stood next to, the AC vent just to keep cool. So it's pretty hot today too. I'm kind of trying to keep myself nice and hydrated. I'm already about halfway through my first water, and it's like we barely began. I'm gonna flip the stock again. Much more glowy, much more glowy. It's what I want to see, but I want to see it all along the stock and not just on the end. Evening sandwich, welcome to the stream. How was your weekend, sandwich? So last weekend, I guess it was Friday, I sprayed for wasps, and for the most part they stayed away all weekend, but I just saw one pass the window, so I don't know. Hopefully, they stay away. They're probably actually afraid the neighbor is mowing the yard or on that side of the house, and it's pretty noisy, and the animals and stuff, they don't like that. I had some moving stuff with my parents. Ooh, moving. Sometimes that's, it's fun and a new experience to move, but the actual act of moving itself can kind of suck, grabbing a hold of all your stuff, boxing it up and moving it in that kind of sucks, but new adventures are always fun. Whilst we are waiting on the heat, what are you expecting to build? Time will be for this first axe head. So as far as this axe head, honestly, I have no idea how long this is going to take. The hammerhead took us about 2.5 weeks-ish to complete, and I'm like optimistically, I think that would be a good time frame for the amount of time that this axe head will take me. However, this is my very first time making an axe head, and there is a chance that I will screw something up horribly. And it's a much greater chance for this axe head than there ever was for the hammerhead. And the reason I say that is I'm doing a folded axe, right? So basically you fold the stock in half and you forge weld it together to create the chopping surface of the axe. And it has been many years since I've done any forge welding whatsoever, and I've never forge weld 4140. So there is always going to be the chance that I will not be able to effectively forge weld the face of this axe. So we shall see. That should come no sooner than Friday, maybe Monday at the very earliest for that. Welcome in, Bluesy. Welcome in. You know what? I keep forgetting to change the Facebook link on my Nightbot. as we discussed, wasps will usually not actively attack unless you are too close to the nest or provoke them. Yeah, like I said, I kind of live with them overall. They don't really bother me, but it's kind of, if I don't spray for them, there are so many of them that like join the nest or whatever, that it becomes very difficult not to stir up the nest. So it's better that I get rid of them early and keep them gone as much as possible. Screw something up. Isn't it easier to screw something down? I mean, maybe. It is usually pretty easy to screw something down. Although, if you don't pre-drill, sometimes it's easy to crack your wood, and then that makes it a screw up, right? You crack your wood because you didn't pre-drill. I am in the middle of harvest, so watching in my combine whilst going on the AV line. True. So, isn't it pretty late at night for you, Bluesy? I don't know. Do you do night harvest? Is it easier to do night harvest? I'll bet you it's cooler to do night harvest than day harvest. I think over here it is illegal to kill wasps. If you need the nest gone because there are children around or someone is allergic, you have to call someone to relocate them alive. Interesting. Yeah, wasps are not one. Well, here in the United States, we are pretty liberal with our use of pesticides, especially here in the Midwest. So there's a lot less regulation on, what types of pesticides and herbicides are used. And that can cause a lot of issues. But it's just the way things are here, I guess. So it's something that, we should probably work on, but, I'm not a member of the government. Well, you should use self-tapping screws. I should. Unauthorized Nate, welcome to the stream. Welcome, welcome. It will be hammer time very shortly, probably within the next, 30 seconds to 1 minute or so. I'm kind of still relaxing a little bit, and then I'll get started. Most of today is just going to be processing steel, tapering, or, thinning it out and lengthening it. So, yeah. As long as the crop is not too wet, we keep harvesting. Interesting. Hello, hello. Glad I made it back and not too late. Yeah, we're just getting started. This is actually going to be our first heat of the day, so we should be around for at least another 2 hours or so. Yeah. So yeah, we're just getting started. Welcome. All right, let's do our first heat. So before we do that, let's bring the press down so that we don't waste our heat. Alrighty, so that looks like it's pretty decent. So I'm going to turn this off for the moment so that when I wrestle with the steel, it's not continuously moving down. Yeah. Alright. There we go. Should have a pretty decent view on that. Let me wrestle this piece of steel a little bit. I think I might use this set of tongs for the moment. We're gonna go over here and start by shoring up some of the fishtailing that's going on here. Flatten that out a bit. Alright, back in the fire. I'm gonna flip it around too, so that we can get the other side. Thin it out a bit. There we go. Good first heat. I wish I had not started the heat in the middle of an ad. I didn't realize that the ad was going to start. So I hope you guys saw, for the most part, that first heat. Goodness gracious. All right. I'm going to grab some more water. So this week, or I guess this month, because it's been about a month, we bought a new package of Gatorade, and they're bigger this time. So instead of the 8 ounces, I think we've got 16 ounces. So I'll have plenty of Gatorade with electrolytes so that I can drink and stay hydrated. This package is red, blue, and yellow. I don't know that I've ever actually had yellow Gatorade. I mean, I feel like it's the, or not I feel like, but it is the original color, like the one that they started with. But like I said, I don't think I've ever drank it. So we'll see if I like it or not. I think it's supposed to be lemon lime. So we'll see. I don't know if I like it or not. Why Gatorade? It's too sweet. The reason I use Gatorade is because I can buy it in bulk relatively easily, and then I also do not have to mix it myself. Like a lot of the really good, less sugary electrolyte replacements are powders that you kind of have to put in the water, and it's just easier to grab a Gatorade from the fridge than mix the powder and everything. So, yeah, it'd probably be better if I was using something more geared towards hydration and less sugar, but it's what it is. That piece looks like it will take a lot of work to draw out to full length and thickness. It probably, in all technicality, it probably will. But from that size piece, we got from this size piece here to that size in one stream. So I think that it's reasonable to assume that we will half that piece in the same amount of time for this stream. We might still have a little bit left to go at the beginning of Wednesday's stream, but I think that at that point we should be able to start really drawing out the length or like the edges of the axe itself. I know, I just make tea, add sugar, and add salt, so the taste is neutral. Yeah, like I said, it's convenient to just go and grab one from the fridge instead of having to actually like actively make it. And I mean, eventually I will probably change to like some kind of weird powder drink, you know, but it is what it is. I'm lazy. Okay, didn't expect you would be able to move it that fast. Cool. Yeah, because I'm using the press for the majority of the heavy lifting on this project, or at least so far. We're not doing a lot of hand hammering today. I honestly, even if I wanted to do a lot of hand hammering, I would probably still be using the board or like the press because I am kind of tired today. As a lot of you guys who have been around for a while know, I do have a chronic illness, and if I push myself too hard, I have a tendency to just kind of crash, and I can't move. And I'm getting to the point where I'm gonna crash within the next day or two. So I'm praying that my crash will happen tomorrow when I'm not streaming. So that way I can relax, sit on or at my desk and edit things as opposed to losing work time. So much press time today, a little less hand hammering. Well, if I had a hammer, I mean, if you had a hammer, I mean, if I had a partner here today, that I have a sledgehammer. I'm always looking for strikers. If you're ever in the area, look me up. I can use a striker. But yeah, because I work alone, the press works beautifully. That's all I really have the funds for right now, but it works. It works pretty well. Yeah, sure. Yes, I mean, if someone wants to strike for me, yeah, don't crash. Take care of yourself to catch yourself. What sludge? A 10 kilo? I'm not sure, honestly. My sledge is over here. Let me grab it. If I can grab it. Raw. So this is the sludge that I have. So this guy, it's my normal hammer. It's about 3. So I don't know. Maybe this is about 10 pounds. It kind of. Oh, it's 8 pounds. So I'm not entirely sure what that is as far as kilos, but 10 pounds or 8 pounds. I'm sorry. I'll put that over there. I have a chronic illness as well. It sucks, but at least meds I took for it helped stabilize it, and I no longer need to take meds for it. That is awesome. I'm so glad that you've been able to manage your chronic illness. Awesome. But yeah, Lucy said it's 8 or 6 and a bit. If we weren't 5 to 6 hours away from each other, I'd strike for you. Oh, 4 and a bit. Okay. Yeah, I'm not amazingly good with the conversion between American Standard, I guess Imperial Standard, although it could be named American Standard anymore since we're almost the only place in the world that still uses it. But Imperial Standard to metric conversions. I'm not amazingly good at that. 8 pounds would be 3.6 kegs, but this looked much heavier. It did look much heavier, but that's what it's labeled as, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, it was almost twice as long as my 3-pounder, which is like just under 1 keg, or kilo. I don't know why I always say keg. Because beer, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I bought it because my partner said that they would strike for me at one point, and it never happened. So it just kind of sits in the shop. I hope it's not as hot there than it is here. According to the Googles, it is actually 86 degrees Fahrenheit here. I feel it feels a lot hotter than that. I'm not entirely sure why, it only says 86. But and I mean, it's not just because I have the forge on. Part of the reason, but definitely not the only reason. All right. I think I'm going to do another heat. We've got a little bit of splaying out happening on both of the ends of this bar. So the first couple heats are going to be us squishing those back in to give ourselves nice parallel sides. And then we're going to start drawing out that length and thinning that material out. So we're going to do our next heat real fast. And we're going to drop a bunch of stuff. In the process, whoa, it doesn't help when you trip. Here we go. Well, that's interesting. All right, back in the fire. And here we go. All right. All right, so we were able to flatten out those little splaying sections, so we should just be able to go back into squishing that width down and making it a lot skinnier, lengthening it out. I got some more metal this weekend, including a bandsaw blade that's about a foot wider, or wide and taller than me. Oh wow. Between that and the leaf springs, the railroad clips, I shouldn't need blade steel for a long time, unless I want new steel. Yeah. Recycled steel is awesome, as long as you know exactly what it is. I have a lot of trouble where, if someone gives me a piece of steel and I don't know what it is, then I don't know what it's made of either. So there are guides that you can find online that will tell you what the majority of different recycled steels are, like what alloys they are, and it'll give you the information that you need for heat treatment and all of that, and forging and whatnot. So when you have unknown recycled steel, always make sure that you find out what it most likely is. That way you're not risking zinc or chrome or anything like that. No, the U.S., Myanmar, and Liberia use the standard system. You are all such great, well-known countries, of course. Technically, the U.S. did sign the metrification treaty, so they are a metric country. They just don't know it. You use grams and liters and such, but don't believe me? Look at the packet of painkillers. And what is the amounts of active ingredients as mentioned? That's correct, milligrams. Yeah, and I mean, we do use liters all the time, too, because, we sell carbonated beverages like soda in liters. So, the most famous one is the 2 liters. of soda that you can buy here, which is quite a lot of soda. And I mean, you can buy a lot of stuff in metric here, but it's always alongside the imperial standard stuff. But yeah, I know that we aren't the only area that uses imperial standard, but there are so few places nowadays. And honestly, I feel like if we would just start teaching both metric and imperial to the kids, then eventually when the kids get old enough, then we can stop teaching imperial and then transition into using metric. But we don't want to do that. So I don't know. It's so much easier to use metric for everything, and I try it for with as much stuff as possible to use metric. And I know it doesn't seem that way because I'm always giving you pounds and inches, but I do buy a lot of my hardware, like my manufactured bolts and nuts and things. I do buy those in metric sizes. I do have what are they called? My taps. All my taps are metric sizes. It is really hard though to buy the bits that go with the metric sizes. You kind of have to go with the closest imperial standard bit to the metric tap. It's obnoxious. Kids on the schoolyard. What? You're still using imperial? I have gotten metric long ago. Yes. Bully people into it. Maybe not bully them, but peer pressure. There are 3 countries, and People's Republic of Myanmar is not looked at that favorable. Same with Liberia. Problems with human rights and such. I mean, I'm not amazingly familiar with either of those countries, but they are what they are, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, for our next heat, we are going to be thinning out the material, and that we should be good to go with that. I used to use an imperial to watch TV. An imperial. Honestly, when I hear the word imperial, I'm reminded of the imperials from video games. There's several video games where a faction is called the Imperials. So you've got Fallout, New Vegas that has Caesar's Legion, and they're kind of the Imperials, and then in Skyrim you've got the Imperials and stuff. And that's kind of what I think about. That's how the antenna was called. Oh, okay. Yes, the Imperial March from Star Wars. Yes, the Star Wars Imperials. I used to play Star Wars: The Old Republic, and they have a different sort of Imperials. So they have the Sith Empire, and they call them the Imperials. So I don't know. And I mean, honestly, the measurement, it's called imperial standard because it's the British Empire's standard measurement, or it used to be way back in the day. And then they got enlightened, and now they use metric like everybody else, except for those 3 countries. I wonder if there would be a metric march. I mean, maybe. We could write one. Yes, the foot. Whose foot? And I mean, the king's foot. And every time a new king ascends to the throne, you change the measurement, right? A foot is the size of the king's foot. An inch is the size of the tip of the thumb to the first knuckle. A foot, or no, a cubit, I think, is from here to here. I think it would be really confusing if we still changed the standard measurements based on something so arbitrary. But what about the queen? I mean, no one cares about the queen. Cornwall 81 in 110. Yeah. I think eventually they did standardize it based on, like, I think longitudinal measurements. I think, if I'm not mistaken. I could be very mistaken. I am often mistaken. That was called L in German, like an elbow. Do you know that imperial measurements are defined in metric? You have told me this many times, Bluesy. All right, I am gonna do another heat. But yeah, Bluesy, you have told me this on several occasions. I think every time we talk about metric measurements, you tell me that imperial measurements are defined in metric. But it is an interesting trivia bit, I will admit. Ah, dang it, I've done it again. I can report that as fact. Yes. Welcome to the stream, Ping. Alright. Thank you so much, Chris Gristle, for that follow 13 minutes ago. Thank you so much. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the stream. I appreciate all of you guys' support, by viewing, follows, subscriptions, anything, whatever you feel comfortable. Thank you so much. All right. So I figure if we start at the end and work our way towards the middle on both sides, like flipping each heat, we should get a decent amount of thinning and length. We will definitely be taking a little bit of time to thin out that width and make sure that we're gaining length and not width. We will eventually want that width in the future, but not until we're starting to define the blades for that axe shape. Welcome to us crazies. I mean, hi. I mean, yeah, we are kind of crazy, So I was in this guild in Final Fantasy 14 for a while that decided that they were a cult. So every time someone would join, they'd be like, "Welcome to the cult." It was kind of off-putting at first, but it kind of became endearing. So I don't know, maybe I did join their cult. I did end up leaving that guild, but not until I left Final Fantasy 14. But yeah, we are not a cult. I'm not a cult leader. We're just a community of people who like watching fire and glowy metal and talking. There's nothing kind of about my craziness. Did the cult have blue oysters? No, I don't think it did. I don't think we had blue oysters. We had onions and chocobos. We were very into growing chocobo onions so that we could level our chocobos. No cowbell. More cowbell. More cowbell. That's something interesting that we could make in the future, a cowbell. Although I kind of feel like we would get a little bit less forging because I feel like cowbells are made of primarily of sheet. But it would be interesting to make a cowbell. I think it would be a lot easier within the confines that I have kind of set out for us to make a triangle, though, than a cowbell, like a dinner bell. Because then most of a triangle is just like bending round stock or tapering round stock. That might be a fun project at some point, a triangle, or maybe attempting a cowbell. Reaper would be a good name for an axe head. Yeah, it would be. I feel like it would have to be a big old, like, axe. So in World of Warcraft in Pandaria, there's a quest line where the captain of whatever group you're in asks, like, this dwarf, "Do you have an axe?" And the dwarf goes, "You looking for a wood cutting axe or a people killing axe?" And I feel like Reaper would have to be a people killing axe, but we don't do people killing here. So our axe is going to be a wood cutting axe. Don't fear the Reaper. Jedi Jeb, welcome to the stream. I think it's more of a press sheet metal stuff for a cowbell. It kind of really is. And I do work with sheet, but there's a lot less forging involved that with a piece of thin enough sheet to get the correct resonance for a cowbell. I think all this tongue-in-cheek thing is going over Ray's head. I mean, maybe, probably. It is really hard for me to understand people's get like the implications in people's like their text. Yeah. I'd say more interesting thing would be to make a bell. Are there steel bells? Bleh. Are there steel bells shaped like ship's bells? I mean, maybe. Go ahead and explain it. The axe. We are looking for a shrubbery. Okay. So I do actually have a pattern for a jingle bell, and so maybe I have been planning on doing a jingle bell in the smithy closer to Christmas because it's kind of more like a Christmas themed project. But yeah, I'm probably, as far as the cowbell and the axe name, maybe the joke is going over my head. I'm sorry. I'll send you a link to a YouTube. All right. I mean, I am aware of like the Chris Farley needs more cowbell. You know, that skit. But I guess I just took it as a, you know, a segue into talking about other projects. It would be fun to make a cowbell or another bell, for that matter. Don't fear the Reaper, Blue Oyster Cult, more cowbell. Oh, okay. Yeah. That was the song that they were playing? Alright. I guess when... Because of the joke of the name, the Blue Oyster Club, like, I immediately just went to the meaning of that, the title, or, you know, the name there. So, yeah, I guess the joke kind of went over my head. So we are going to start a ad here shortly. So I will wait until after the ad is done to do my next heat. But after that ad, I will be doing another heat. Just looked it up. Big bells like the ship bells and church bells are bronze or brass. Yeah, they are. Bells are often cast as opposed to blacksmith. We are currently in the ad. I don't know if you guys can hear me or if you guys are actually watching the ads, because you know they've got the little ads now. So we'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about the conversation once that ad is over. But yeah, man, I'm going through the water like so ridiculously fast today. Oh my gosh, guys, I am super like energized. I think like when I first came out here, I was super tired, and once I started at the stream, I think my adrenaline just kind of is charging up, and so I feel like I can finish the stream, but I gotta make sure that I'm careful that after the stream ends, I actually go out and rest and not, you know, continue to try and work and stuff, because I think the second I sit down after the stream, I'm probably gonna crash. So yeah, bells, the ship bells and like, you know, bells, church bells and things like that. Most of those are actually cast in bronze, brass, or other materials like that. They have a much nicer resonance than a steel bell would have. So like the Liberty Bell from the United States and a lot of the church bells, yeah, they are cast in bronze. And it kind of, it's a difficult thing to do to get the thickness correct to get that resonant sound. And Corwin is right. There are some hand hammered cymbals. The brands that come to mind are Zildjian and Sabian. Those are, I believe, Indonesian or Indian brands of cymbals, but they began hand hammered. I think the cheaper ones, specifically Sabian, do a manufactured process, a spun cymbal, as opposed to hand hammered. But oftentimes the best cymbals are hand hammered. That's great, I bet. So yeah, I have done a lot of casting in the past, but like I said, it's really difficult to get the thickness to, or like consistent throughout the entirety of the bell. And because if you have any sort of like bubbles or porosity within the metal as it's being poured, you actually get inconsistencies, and that's actually what happened to the Liberty Bell in the United States. There was like some flaw in the casting, and so that first time that they used that bell, it cracked. All right, I'm gonna do another heat. Thank you so much, Jedi Jed, for that follow. I very much appreciate it. Welcome to the community and welcome to the stream. Back in the fire. I think for our next heat, we're probably going to go on the top, like that thinner side. We've got a little bit of curvature going, and I want to correct that before it gets really bad. So I was thinking about something while I was forging, and I don't normally do a lot of talking while I'm forging because you guys can't really hear me well, and yeah. So I think that I'm really looking forward to raising the bottom plate on the press today, because every time I have it that low, I kind of have to crouch in order to feed the metal through and be able to see what I'm doing. And it's a lot of, it's kind of annoying. I kind of have to like shrimp it up a bit, you know? It's the whole crouching. Have you guys ever like attempted to crouch like in video games in real life? You know, you get the first person shooter video games, and like the first thing that you do is you like do the crouch and stand thing. And I tried that. I went laser tag with a group of friends, and I decided that I was gonna be great, and I was gonna do like that crouch walk stuff. You know, that burns the tops of your calves so badly. I felt it for the next week. It was awful. I learned my lesson. So I am kind of looking forward to raising the bottom die up to the next like notch. I also have this thing where I feel like I need to drill a hole in the side so that I can raise it to like the halfway mark. But I also feel like I don't want to weaken the bars of the press. I'm always afraid that it's going to like crumple on me if I modify the frame in any way. But yeah. I don't know. Maybe one of these days we will replace this press with like a different press. I'm not entirely sure what I would rather do if I want to, replace it with a wood, like a firewood chopping pneumatic press, or if I would rather like buy an actual press. I haven't decided yet. I don't know. For a while, we're stuck with that thing. Goodness gracious. So we are probably going to need a little bit of time on Wednesday to kind of finish up forging this down. We're not getting quite as much material movement as I wanted. It might surprise me. And I might get to a point where I move more material than I think I will, but we might actually need another day of material processing. Hopefully not, though. Tough to decide between the two. Probably end up with both. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if I were to buy, or I mean, make one of the presses that's made out of like a wood chopper, I would definitely eventually end up with a manufactured press. It's kind of like, how big of an upgrade do I want? Do I want to just save my pennies to the point where I can buy a manufactured press? Or do I think that I'll need, the wood chopping press? I don't know. I think it depends. I think it depends on what I'm doing when I acquire the amount of money I need to upgrade. Or when this thing breaks, It's already broken once on us, and we were able to repair it. We shall see if it breaks again. I think I'm still in the whole replacing the bottle jack would be better than upgrading, at least unless the frame itself breaks. I am out of water again, so I'm going to fill my drink one more time, and after that, we'll go to Gatorade. Ugh. That last little bit of water kind of reminded me of the soap that I used to clean this cup. So I guess I didn't rinse it out enough. I do that all the time. You guys are constantly hearing me complain about that. Alright. That or rust in the water. Do you think you'd have use for a 24-inch ram stroke? It seems like a lot for metalwork. I really don't. But the presses that are made out of wood choppers are a lot faster, and so it takes less time for the two pieces to squish together, I guess. I don't think that I need the 2 feet, and even if I had the 2 feet, I've got it in all technicality here, But yeah, I'm not planning on doing anything quite that large for quite some time. I think honestly, the biggest piece of steel that I'm looking at using or processing is probably this guy right here. It's really long, but the height and width of it is not much bigger than the piece that we used for that hammer that we made. And honestly, I think that's the biggest piece of stock that I'm really interested in playing with. Just because, it's a lot of effort, and my press is a little bit on the slow side, but hand hammering it is also not ideal, because, it takes a lot more effort. I also don't have a big enough anvil to really maximize the amount of work that I get out of a hammer blow. This guy is only 127 pounds, and the bigger the material that you're trying to process, the bigger the anvil that you need to get that nice kickback out of it. So if I was going to do anything much bigger than the stock that we're using right now and the stock we use for the hammerhead, I would want to do more like a 200-pound anvil. So we would probably almost double the size of this guy. Yeah, the travel speed is a function of the hydraulic pump, not the ram. Yeah. It definitely is. And that's the other thing that my partner was talking about. I was talking about how the press is really, really slow. And my partner mentioned that it might actually go a lot faster if we replaced the air compressor with a bigger one. Not that we have the funds to do that right now, but getting a bigger air compressor would probably speed up the work and increase the amount of force. Well, not really, because a 20-ton bottle jack is still a 20-ton bottle jack, but it would make it faster. Are they converted to electric motors? Probably need a 3-phase electric service then. Well, I have a 220 amp plug right over there. And that's like kind of what I use for welding as well as the kiln. So I do have the ability to use a plug like that, but I only have one out in the shop. So, it's kind of, what do I want to plug in at any given time? It's like I'm never going to be using the air compressor and I will be using the air compressor and a welder at the same time. There is a purpose for that, especially if I'm using something like a plasma cutter. But there's never a time when I'm going to be using the welder and the kiln at the same time, or unlikely anyway. All right, I'm going to do another heat. Heat. We decided that we were going to do this direction. So I need to open the press guide. Now I can close it. A lot of forging in this direction, but I did want to straighten it out a bit. So we've kind of straightened it out a bit. It'll work. Now we gotta squish it more this way. I might actually take it to the anvil. I'm not sure. I know I said I wouldn't, but I think I lied. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'll probably take it to the anvil for our next heat. So I'm gonna move this camera. Moving cameras. And we'll focus. There we go. Now the thing about using the anvil with this piece of steel is that it's really bouncy, so we might end up dropping it. I've cleared the space in front of the anvil of anything that'll like melt or anything like that, but it still might bounce. We got to be a little bit on the careful side. Would throwing more bricks insulation stuff around your heat source help you out any? In glass blowing, the furnace usually has a ton of insulation around it to cut down on gas costs and keeping the glass molten, but the glory holes don't have it around them. So really, this forge, it is very similar in design to a glory hole for glass blowing. But instead of a lot of glory holes that I see normally are fiber fracks, or I guess a KO wool, which is like a reflective insulating wool. This is actually a refractive fire brick. I also have it lined with a fire mortar, I guess. So the design is kind of more like a kiln for glass blowing, like a glass kiln, but the function is more like a glory hole. And I have actually plugged about half of the bottom with more brick, and I have reduced the amount of space that I have to heat. So I have done that a little bit. Yeah, it just looks like the glory holes I used to use, but smaller. Yeah, I mean, it is a lot smaller than it used to be. And I also have bricks that kind of cover up the front face, like, because a lot of glory holes, they have like little doors that you can open and close to keep the heat inside. That's kind of what these bricks do at the same time. Ray, the amount you are squishing, technical I know, the material, is that to retain the integrity of the metal, or is it the limit of the press itself? It is the limit of the press itself. When I'm doing like the thicker side, it's kind of to maintain the same width that I have. I don't want to do I don't want it thinner. So when I'm doing the thicker side like that, it's basically to keep those sides parallel to each other. But when I'm doing the thinner side, I'm trying to forge that down. But I do lift the press up when it starts struggling, and so that is the limit of the press. This is only a 20-ton press, and I have it really far down. So it's not actually getting 20 tons of pressure, because the springs that I have here are actually reducing the amount of pressure that I'm actively getting from the bottle jack itself, because they are pulling it upward. So that extra, I mean, if I were to take the springs out, or like there's 4 springs in there, if I were to reduce that down to 2, the press would go up slower, but it would also press with more force. So yeah, I have, it's one of those things where I'm constantly wondering if I should take one of the springs off of the press to make it function a little bit better and probably even faster. But I'm also like, I like that it goes up so much faster. And the strength of the springs is in question, I think, for me. So I don't know. There might be a time where I will take one of them out just to see what happens. But I haven't done it yet. It's an experiment I'd like to run. Compromises. Yes, exactly. Compromises. And it's also one of those things where I did it to begin with, and it functioned fine. And it's one of those where if it ain't broke, then don't fix it, right? So I don't know if it would be better to take one set of springs out or not. All I do know is that I need to make sure that the same amount of springs are on both sides. So if I take one set of springs out, I have to take both sides out. I can't have like 2 on one side and 1 on the other. That wouldn't work. And that's kind of one of those stating the obvious things. So, you know. All right. Let's do another heat. I think we have just enough time to do one more heat before the ad pops up. We've got about 5 minutes. realized we were going to go to the anvil. I'm a smarty. And so I don't even have a thing of view of the, yeah. One of these days, guys, one of these days. My brain will function correctly. All right. So we've kind of straightened that out just a little bit further, and I've lost a lot of my heat already, so. We'll be doing another heat at the press, or I mean at the anvil. Smart. One of these days, I will be a smart person. Why I'm smart. I'm just like a little airheady. I get distracted sometimes when we're talking together, and then I just like forget what I'm doing. When I go to edit a lot of my videos to turn the VODs into short form videos, I notice that I will tell you guys the exact same thing for like 2 to 3 heats in a row because I forget what I have and haven't done. Or sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to do the next step, but then I do the same step that I was on previously because I've lost track. I don't know.